Hello, my friends. Today is June 25, 2023, and this is an update on my predictions for the Ukraine war. This is the 11th video in a series. I have not made a video in about 3 months during that first year of the war. I made 10 videos picking up with different issues and topics, and so I've had a lot of requests for another video since I haven't made one in 3 months. And also yesterday something major happened, and that has also prompted me to finally come around here to make another forecast. And by the way, our forecasts are easily 95% accurate. Very exciting. And as I mentioned in some of the first videos that I made on predictions for the Ukraine war, we have graphs like this. And I made a new graph that starts on the day of the war, February 24th, and goes all the way out to July 1st of 2024. That's a year from now. So this is, before I made shorter periods of time. So I made a new graph for the whole time, and I've got 3 graphs here. The green is what I call anti-American sentiment. It's not specifically anti-American. There's nothing in the sky that says we don't like America. It's a desire for a more conservative lifestyle that's based on ancient traditions, is very humble and more introverted and less interested in all the razzmatazz and excitement and wildness that's going on in the world. A quieter, more disciplined, more introverted perspective makes people very skeptical of American values. And that's the green. We see this huge peak. The red, by the way, is the long-term trends. So it's just picking out the longer-term trends and highlights some of the major peaks in the green. So the green and red are telling us essentially the same thing, with the red just showing the big ones and the green showing all of the details. And so I've made forecasts. I'll go over the interpretation of this graph on the next slides. And then the purple is where the pro-American, it's not pro-America, it's pro-individualism. It's the emphasis that each person has their own individual destiny, their own calling, that each person should be able to follow whatever calling they have and not be restricted by convention and habit and the old ways. So you can see these two tendencies can conflict with each other. And a lot of the wars in the world are simply over this dynamic. People just having different preferences, different ways of seeing the world. So when this emphasis on 13 vibration is the vibration of individualism and being able to follow your calling, what you were made for, no matter who you are, no matter what your station in life, no matter anything, that's like a divine gift to be able to do that. When this is high, people in the world tend to feel that. When it's low, it's just not on their minds. There are other priorities. So we can watch this and we can see how the mood, how the tone, how the emphasis changes, and how people's allegiance shifts and how different things are brought out. A lot of the war is really more about misunderstanding and not really appreciating completely what other people are doing, believe it or not. That's fundamentally a lot of what's going on. Yeah, there are bad guys. There are lots of bad guys, and there are good guys. But this inability to understand and appreciate each other is really fundamental. So here's an overview of the forecast. By the way, I've got a lot to say. This may take 2 videos. I like to cut off at about a half hour. We'll see. I got a lot to say here, but here's an overall prediction. First of all, I'm making this video on June 25th. Yesterday, June 24th, I got the news, maybe it was on the 23rd, 24th, that Prigozhin, this head of the Wagner group, an independent military group, they call it a mercenary group. They're independent, but they collaborate and cooperate with the Russian government. They've been leading a lot of the attacks against Ukraine, and Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner group, has been very vocal about the lack of support from Russia, not supplying ammunition, etc. And yesterday, around the 23rd or 24th of June, he had enough. That's it. I'll just run the military myself. And he takes thousands of his troops and takes over one of the military command centers in Russia, which is south of Moscow. And then he says, okay, we're going to march north right into Moscow. I turned on the news last night and huge excitement about this. Now, I don't have the birth charts for Prigozhin or Putin. I don't know all the details. I can't give a very good forecast. But looking at the overall trends, what I saw yesterday is that it looked like this could blow over very fast. Because around June 26th, that's tomorrow, Sunday, could be Monday time in Russia, right around there, it looks like a strong unified movement from Russia. So when we are interpreting these astrological configurations, these energy forces, it's not a matter of what I want, it's not a matter of what I prefer, it's not a matter, all I'm doing is looking at what those energy forces are and where they're going. And let me show you some of what I saw. The Russian movement, as I explained in previous videos, is driven by 7 vibration, especially 7 times 3, 21 vibration. So here, what we can do is we can just look at the 7 vibration chart to see what's going on, and simply, I'm just thinking about stretching this a little bit. There we go, to fit in the window a little bit better. Especially 7 times 3 vibration. These are the forces. So here's the 7 vibration for yesterday. Actually, this is 8 p.m. Eastern time. That'd be early morning today, a little bit after this started. This is probably about a day or so after Prigozhin and takes his troops in to take over this military command center. We go over here to the chart adjust. Let's go back one day, and we see what's going on in the very important 7 vibration configuration. And we see if there are any slow moving patterns that last for more than a day. So here we are, would be early morning on the 25th. And we're going to see something very interesting on this would be late on the 25th, early, like before dawn on the 26th in Ukraine and Moscow, in that area of the world. Mercury and Jupiter come together. And with Mars, actually, it's Mars and Jupiter. Mars and Jupiter come together in 7 vibration, square Uranus. There is a Mars-Uranus square in the sky. We can go back to the natal chart and see that. That Mars-Uranus square picks up Jupiter. Let me go back a few days. Here we are on the 23rd, evening of the 23rd, early on the 24th in Russia. And we see that Mars is 6 degrees from Jupiter, and Mars is 9 degrees from squaring Uranus. This is in the 7 vibration chart. These are the orbs in 7 vibration, which are larger than the natal chart. When we get to the 24th, we see Mars moving up to 24, Jupiter moving up to 27. When we get to the evening of the 25th, early on the 26th in Russia, now Mars and Jupiter are tightly square Uranus. That's why I say that on the 26th, there's this optimism and unification and forward progress in the Russian movement, because there's a Mars, Jupiter, Uranus. And then Mercury comes into it on the early on the 27th. So it might be more like Monday, Sunday and Monday, this feeling of unification, progress, dynamic movement in Russia. Now, that's an overall trend. I don't know everything going on with Prigozhin and Putin, but that's why I felt that this could resolve and very oddly come around to a resolution rather quickly. Odd in the sense that there was this sense of like that there's chaos going on there, which is good for the West, obviously. I mean, Ukraine is looking at this saying, okay, great, they're going crazy over there, they're fighting each other. But I think it might get resolved. Again, I don't know the details of the individuals. I don't have great confidence in this. It's more likely than not. But in addition, we're looking at some of the tools and understanding how these forecasts are made. And it looks like it's happening. I mean, this morning I looked at the news before I made this video, and they're saying, okay, Prigozhin's called off the march to Moscow. I almost wish I had had time to make this video yesterday before that happened, because this is the prediction I'm making, that it would cool off, and it's already cooling off. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. Where are you, PowerPoint? There you are. Okay, now for long-term forecasts, that's just a little issue of what's going on right at this moment. In August, the fighting continues. We're in late June, so through July, intense fighting. We expect Ukraine to be making progress. I made that forecast 6 months ago. Now it's more obvious that Ukraine should be making progress next month because the spring offensive didn't happen in the early spring. It's heading into summer, finally taking off and heading in there. By August, the fighting gets extremely intense. There's a lot of mental unrest, mental instability. People start going to extremes, driven by passionate beliefs and philosophies. Very intense. And I'm going to explain why. Let me just give you a summary first. Then, around October, there's some good news for Ukraine, NATO, and United States, which is another wave of young people wanting more personal freedom. That 13 vibe interest and the ability to choose whatever calling in life you want, it gets strong. When that gets strong, there's a lot of acceptance and more feeling more comfortable with the American way. When 7 vibe is strong, there's more skepticism. So that starts happening. Doesn't affect the war very intensely, but it gives some optimism that for people in the West. Then in November, something happens. And I'll show you the details of this. It's in the 11 vibration. People are tired of the war. They've had enough. It's not ending. It can't be put to rest. Goes on and on. Even though Ukraine makes a lot of advances in previous months, Russia has a couple of high points around September, according to the graph. People are tired of it, and they start negotiating. There will be a partial truce around November. That's one of my predictions. Partial truce. They'll probably call it an armistice. Some kind of agreement of some kind. Now, Zelensky has said no compromise. Russia is going to leave Crimea. They're going to leave eastern Ukraine. If he sticks to that, this compromise is going to be minimal. He will soften up. He will listen a little bit more. We don't know how much he will bend. We don't know how open Russia is to it. But they will be more open to it in November than any other time. That is the window of opportunity to bring a compromise. Now, if you're of the opinion, no, I don't want compromise. I want Russia out of there, or I want Ukraine out of whatever you believe. My prediction is you're not going to get it. It's just not going to happen. This war won't happen that way because I'm just looking at the energetics, not what I want, not what I believe. I'm just telling you what the energetics are. So there's a real hope around November. Realistically, maybe there'll be a small softening. Now, something happens in December. That wave of freedom that happened in October gets really super strong in December. In December, people in China, in Russia, in the United States, in many countries, in Iran, we know that periodically young people, we saw in Iran women standing up and saying, we need to be able to make our own choices in life. That 13 vibe gets really strong, and this gives a lot of optimism and good feeling especially to the America, because of the emphasis on 13 vibration. Now, the big mistake that the United States makes almost every time there's a big wave of 13 vibration is they say, oh, good, they want freedom. They don't, they're willing to fight, to break out of their chains, as if we're so free and whatever, and like they will become like us. This is the thinking. And let's facilitate it. And then people will even use that nasty term regime change. That polarizes the people who are not buying into this 13 vibration wave against it, creates more tension, and in the end does more harm than good. So hopefully that the United States doesn't try to force the issue, tries to facilitate it in peaceful ways, in like cultural exchanges, things like this, discussing things, coming to a plan to bring everybody into it. And so by December, the Ukraine war will soften. It'll soften from the long, hard summer, from people getting tired of the war, and from the United States feeling like, you know what, and NATO, and all, the whole Western way of thinking, especially the United States, that, you know what, there's progress, and we can live with some kind of compromise. So I think things will look better in December and January than they do now, but not a resolution to war. So that's the forecast. Okay, so this is about, I already showed you this, the what's going on right now. And here's a summary of the forecast. Let's see what I've got here and see if there's anything I didn't mention. There's a lot here. Notice that when the war started, the red, which is we'll call it the Russian success, was high. This is starting right on the day. I could have started this a few days before, and you would see that this red graph was high when the war started, but then it dropped immediately. It flattened right out in April, May, June, July, right after the war. The red graph goes down. The green, which shows you the day-by-day pro-Russia, it's okay. It's there. But the pro-Western graph, the purple, is extremely high also. And so this period in here, right after the war began, this is when there was so much excitement, enthusiasm. You might remember those days in late February, early March, when the Ukrainians pushed the Russians back. It was like David and Goliath, the little Ukrainian army pushing the big Goliath of Russia out, and how courageous he was, a lot of enthusiasm. As this graph, the purple graph, was high, but then it settles down and the long, hard battle begins. Then September, October, the shift changes. The green and red is high, the purple's not so high. This is when I predicted Russia would be at its highest strength, and I predicted specifically they would claim eastern Ukraine as part of Russia. They would annex it, and they did exactly what I predicted, and that's what drew the line. The line was drawn. Russia said, "This is ours. It's not yours. This is part of Russia." That was a defining moment, and they held these elections. People call them sham elections, whatever. They established their presence there during this high peak. Then the long, hard battle happens, and here's the period in March, and I'll show you in the next slides how Russia did advance in March. I said that they would likely take over Bakhmut, and the news at the time was, no, the Wagner group is leaving, they're going to Africa or something. This is all not working out for Russia. I believed the news. It wasn't exactly that way. This was a resurgence of Russian power. It's when Prigozhin put the flag up in Bakhmut to show that we have it. But he claims he didn't have enough support, that Russia didn't take advantage of this high point in their graph, and he's very frustrated. And so Prigozhin was right. That was the time when Russia could have put full steam and full support into it and gotten even more success. So anyway, they did have a relative success, short period success then. And I will show you that in the graphs. I've got specific maps of Russian-controlled area, and you'll see it grows in February and March, then subsides as the red and green goes down into a moderate level. So Ukraine will be high in November through December. So as we head into November, December, in here we see the purple graph high. So that's part of this wave of the pro-American sentiment I just talked about right there. Okay, so there's some of the graph and how we interpret it. Now here's another thing that we can do to see what goes on. We do this forecast, this vibrational astrology forecast, and what I'm going to do first is run it with 12 and 3 degrees. This is a maximum 12 degree orb, minimum of 3 days. What this does is it picks up a lot of what's going on in the sky day by day. It only has to last for 3 days within a 12 degree orb. So this gives us the most thorough, most detailed analysis. And when we look at this for the current time period, June 24th, 25th, it doesn't look that disturbing. Another reinforcement that this blip that happened in the tension that erupted, I should say, in Russia would be rather short-lived. We're not seeing it as a peak of a long-term high-tension situation. It's something between Prigozhin and Putin, and looks like it's going to get resolved, although that tension is there permanently. Let me say this. I have it on one of the slides, but let me say it now, what's on my mind. Russia's driven in this war by 21 vibrations, 7 times 3. 7 times 3 is a deeply internal way of being, and it doesn't take in a lot of input. It's prone to conspiracy theories, extreme perceptions, because it's driven by a lot of internal mechanisms, their sense of their own heritage and history and their way of life, and not comparing and contrasting all the data, even though they're very smart people. What happens is you get a lot of disagreements. Disagreements will develop. There's always disagreements among the people in these 7 vibrations. The only way they're held together is by a strict authoritarian hand. As soon as that strict authoritarian hand loosens up a little bit, you'll see all the divisiveness going on. Because you're not going to get the majority of people all sharing the same internally developed story. It's not validated by exterior information. That might have sounded abstract. Bottom line is, there's always going to be internal tension and differences within this military action from Russia, because it's driven by a vibration that's prone to lack agreement on all the details. What they agree on is they don't want the West pushing into their lives. They don't want NATO. They don't want American lifestyle. That's what they agree on. And that's what can keep them together. But everything else is subject to different ways of thinking and interpretation. Okay, now back to this. So Prigozhin was correct. February, March 2023 was a time for Russian advancement but the continued mismanagement of the Russian military failed to take advantage of this time period. That's what we see here with this peak. Okay. Now, when we go into this astral vibrational forecast, and we set it to 12 degrees and 7 days minimum, we see the major vibrational patterns in the sky, the huge ones. And these have a big impact. You'll see that in late June, one vibration comes strong. In another one, July, very little going on. We see these major things. In August, we see some new things coming in, and especially this one catches my attention. A 32 vibration, Uranus, Saturn, Neptune. And it continues all the way into, here it is, in late August, still there. Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, 32 vibration, moves out of the 12 degree orb on August 23rd. What does it mean? Saturn, Uranus, Neptune is the most mentally unstable combination there is. 32 is a hard, direct driving force. When you have Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, people go to unrealistic extremes and take extreme behavior, and it's very difficult to manage things reasonably. Wars go out of control, rebellions, everything goes out of control. That's why the fighting I'm expecting to be very intense in August. So this forecast, the astral vibrational forecast, gives us a lot of information. We see 37 vibration, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune through this time period. I'll show you in a minute what that means. But here's a 96 vibration, 12 times 8, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune. And when we get to all the way down, let's go all the way down to October, we start seeing 22 vibration. This is where the impatience comes from. Saturn, Uranus, Pluto in 22 vibration for weeks? Oh my God. People are rebellious. Very, very rebellious. And then going into late October, a 44 Saturn, Neptune, Pluto. Just very, very unstable, very impatient, and that's why the impatience with the war becomes extreme and explosive. There will be explosive demonstrations. People can become violent under these conditions when they feel there's oppression or stagnation. And so there you have that. And then the December, you see nothing in November. Then in December, watch this, 26 vibration, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, 13. 13 and 13 times 2, huge 13 vibration emphasis with Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, the vision, the dream, the magic of everybody being able to choose their own life. Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune. So it's basically a Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. This is huge. And that's why we see it in the graph and we see it here. So two different ways of looking in on it. So these are some of the tools that we use, and they work. When December comes, I think you're going to see this wave of people demanding their individual expression, their individual rights. It should be fairly obvious. If we're wrong, we will learn. But this is why I go out on a limb, make these forecasts. So far, 95% accurate. We'll see what happens in the future. Now let me go over some of the previous things quickly. Let me see. Let me stop here, because this is a good breaking point. I'm at 28 minutes. I'll do a part 2, and we're going to see that the forecasts we made in the past ended up being more accurate than we thought they were. This is part of an evidence-based practice. We go out on a limb, we make predictions, and let's carefully review what happened, because looking at it in hindsight, we can see more clearly how those forecasts worked out. Okay, I'll see you in part 2, and this second and last part of this update on the Ukraine war. Thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.